All right, so in the interest of moving forward, my name is Shanna Robinson, and I teach at a small college in northern Michigan, and I love color. And I want to talk about a little bit about where I came from, and mostly I'm here with questions. I don't have a lot of answers. I have a lot of questions. So I started out studying textiles, and of course I learned to do systematic dyeing so that I could make any color I wanted. And I did that with Proscian MX dyes and Cushing acid dyes. And natural dyes were sort of poo-pooed. This was in the 70s. I felt like they were sort of poo-pooed because they were too difficult to repeat, and there was too much process and too many variabilities. And being a good student, I ingested that and went forward. And of course, I was, like many a good student, I was struggling to figure out how to feed myself. So I waited tables, and I worked at this food co-op, and I got very involved in food. For a long time, I said, food is my life. And I sometimes did some adjunct teaching, not in textiles, obviously. And it might have been too much fun to actually pay a salary, so. And a lot of the time I did all three of these things along with several other part-time jobs. And I decided, gosh, that was an awful lot to juggle. Maybe I should get one regular paycheck. So I went to work for Whole Foods Market, obviously utilizing my food industry knowledge and not my art ability. I was a product specialist. I was a grocery specialist for Whole Foods Market in the Midwest. And I didn't realize it, but it was teaching me a great deal about food, about corporate systems, and I happened to be working for Whole Foods Market when the USDA was crafting their organic standards, and was lucky enough to be sitting at a table during one of the discussions about organic standards and what is important and what do we care about. So after about, 7 years of working for Whole Foods Market, I moved here, which is in northern Michigan. This is Lake Michigan here. Lake Charlevoix is the long lake, and I live partway up on the left in one of the bays. And lucky enough to get a teaching position, this time full-time, but I'm still having fun, okay? And just when I was thinking that my dreams had all come true, a group of local people came to me and asked, would I help them start a nonprofit organization called the Cross Village Rug Works, in which we would teach local people. We have a huge unemployment problem or underemployment problem. Would I teach local people to dye and weave so that they could produce a product that they could then sell? And in the process, we would use local fleece, and this would help us keep farmers on their land, which is a big problem because the farmers can't make ends meet. What happens is the land gets developed and sold to wealthy people from Chicago and used to be from Detroit, although there aren't that many wealthy people in Detroit. Now it's Birmingham or Bloomfield. And so they come up, and those are their second homes in this beautiful place where I live. So this is one of my students working on her loom with local fleece. And the project was going, this was about 2002 that this started. And the project was going along, but it didn't survive. It wasn't making money. So I had developed this whole textiles program at the college where I teach, and my market went away. Because where I teach is also sort of a, we train people for vocation more. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen, But what I started thinking about when working at the Cross Village Rug Works, this is Lake Michigan, and the Cross Village Rug Works was just across the road from this beautiful beach. And I started thinking about what are we going to be doing to our beautiful freshwater. The Great Lakes have 20% of the freshwater in the world, and it seemed like maybe we should be protecting that. So I started looking at alternatives to dyes. These are Greener Shades acid dyes. I don't know if you're familiar with those. And I thought, okay, well, that's a better alternative. But I really wanted to focus on the natural dyes. And one of the things that I had been taught was that the natural dyes were not fast. And it took a long time of teaching dyeing for me to realize that synthetic dyes were they were discovered or invented in 1856. So anything previous to that was made with a natural dye. Duh, right? So then I heard about this guy, Roland Ricketts, who was doing this indigo project in Indiana. And I was lucky enough to drive down and help harvest the field. So Roland will talk about this himself, I'm sure. But there we are, cutting the indigo, and as part of that, we learned appropriate cutting and also how to dye with the indigo fresh out of the field, which was a revelation for me, that you can strip the leaves and make color on the spot. And so I went home knowing that I had to plant a dye garden, and I've been, for a long time, trying to sell the idea, and if somebody has greater leverage with this, I'd love to know. I've been trying to sell the idea of natural dyes as a cross-curricular endeavor. So the biology students would raise the plants, the art students would harvest and dye with them, and the chemistry students would tell us all about why that works. I have not been able to sell that program where I am, and I have also not been able to procure land on campus for my project. But this lavender farm is just around the corner from my house, and finally, in frustration, I asked them, because I have to go here every day to work in my garden. So I asked them for space, and my garden is that place in the back there. That's the beginning of our dye garden. And we're just getting started. This is year 3, so we get to harvest madder this year. And we're growing coreopsis and cosmos and hollyhocks and indigo and madder and weld. And I was trying to figure out what should I do now that the Rugworks is not available. And what I really am interested in is textiles as a regional economic driver, a full circle of production and consumption on a very small scale, because all of the questions of consumption and the questions of production make sense to me if we can just shrink them down in some way. So in an effort to try to figure out how to connect the dots, and Laura had that great slide where she had all those arrows going from all those people and processes, I decided that the thing to do was to figure out to go through the whole process of making the good from beginning. And that way I could meet the farmers, I could meet the millers. So I went out and I met this guy, this is Lion King. And I volunteered at an alpaca shearing, and what I learned about my region is that they have a sort of cooperative method for shearing all the alpacas. There are lots of alpaca farms where I live. And what they do is they bring all the animals to one farm that is set up. The shearer stays there, and then the animals are all sheared, and the work is shared amongst the group. So I met Lion King and some of his friends here. And I had to buy their fleece. And I met these guys. These guys are coated up and ready for shearing. And so I met these guys a few weeks later. And I took all of that fleece. I didn't believe that teaching full-time in the place where I do, that I would finish a project if I tried to spin it all myself. So I found a local fiber mill about 15 miles from my home, and I You can see their ancient equipment there. I took my fleece there, and I have done other work with this mill. They process a lot of the wool that we were using at the college for us from the local sheep. But I'm still trying to connect these dots. And so I had my yarn made, and then I used my plants to make color. And this is where I am in the process at this point. So I have all of this yarn with all of this color, and I have all of these questions, okay? So how can I involve more people? And I've seen some great examples, but I believe that the notion of making as a group effort, a collaborative effort, fashion as making, that's a great idea. And can we create a network that will close this loop and function within our own region? How do we create that employment? And that's the same question. That's the big question. And so I'm just going to lead with those questions and then let Roland come up.